Episode 51. I still can't believe I'm on the other side of this. All right, co-host. I love this. So I don't know if I could say like everyone's been talking about this, but our episode today is about the NAR settlement.
Yes.
National Association of Realtors, which is the largest association in the US, or it is the only one?
It would be the largest organized real estate association in the US that is also tied to the various MLSs in the US.
So they had a big settlement that was fixed, that was centered on fixed pricing or the competition or the lack of in the US. And just because you're who you are, you have way more details on it. And then I have so much I have to say about it. But maybe you can just, I would really love to break down the myths around it, because as I mentioned to you the other day, I sat with a new client and he asked me outright,
right,
how do you think that settlement is going to affect buyer agents and the market in Canada? And I said, it's not. And he was shocked at my answer.
Cole's notes, I would agree. So let's unpack a little bit of what the settlement is, because I was surprised that you even want to talk about this, because I thought this is just so far away from Canada. So National Association of Realtors is kind of like the Canadian Real Estate Association in Canada. Kind of. Let's just pretend. Right? There's differences, but they're kind of the same. So in the US, a bunch of buyers said, hey, we think that you, association, and all of you big brokerages got together in a smoky room and said, we're going to force buyers to pay real estate buyer agents 2.5% and no less. Okay? That was kind of the thrust of their game.
Can I ask you a question?
Claim. Yeah.
Did it come from actual buyers?
It did.
So here's my biggest question. If I don't have to, and I'm sorry, that whole idea, and I've heard agents say it before, well, the buyer really is paying the commission because they're paying it in the house.
And that was the argument. That was the argument.
But I call BS on that.
We'll get to that. So the economic
That's why I never could wrap my head around why they brought up the actual, like the suit. Even the suit. Thank you.
Yes. And part of the lawsuit.
Did I mention that Natalka's a lawyer by trade, so she'll be correcting me a lot.
No, that's okay. That's okay. So in the U.S., the Competition Bureau basically looks at any competition claims like this and says, hey, was there an economic harm that the buyers suffered? And if it's a yes, then now we have something to go on. They're going to look at this. Okay. Now, to prove economic harm, part of the theory was, hey, as a result of buyers having to pay this huge fee, and actually kind of sellers being forced to pay this huge commission fee, prices of
I wish it was huge.
Yes, prices of homes are very, very high, to the tunes of billions of dollars nationally high, right? So the representatives, the lawyers said, look, all these buyers are basically suffering as a result of this conspiracy that all these brokerages and associations have that essentially force sellers to put a buyer co-op fee on their listing of 2.5%, right? And they said, well, we can prove this because NAR and their MLS rules says that the seller has to put a co-op fee for it to be live on the MLS, right? 2.5% or whatever.
Is that a rule there?
It is.
That there has to be.
We have similar rules in Canada.
But my understanding of that is it's very similar, and I really don't want to cloud this, is in the agreement of purchase and sale where it says
cooperating.
Well, there's the cooperating, but also, no, I was actually going to go a different way and say there's a place where it states if HST is included or not included. And you'd say, what does that got to do with commission? The only reason I'm bringing it up is that a lot of our business is just about being very clear about what's being paid where. So if it's not stated, then it becomes this gray area and it's a problem. And I remember because I had an older client and it was the first time in all my years that someone had brought it up and she goes, but it says HST is included. And I said, yes, you don't pay it. And she's like, but it's included. Like, it made her nervous. And I remember good old Joel Kadish, you're listening set. He's like, it has to be outlined where if it's included or not included, because otherwise you could be liable to have to pay it.
Because HST can be payable, but we'll get to that in a second.
But I'm saying, like, that is my understanding, is that it's not a competition fixing issue. It's we have to say out loud who's getting paid what.
And we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Oh, sorry.
No. That's so spot on. Because in the U.S., certain jurisdictions don't have that clarity around who's paying for what, right? Very different in Canada. Now, so back to the settlement. So essentially these buyers are saying, like, as a result of this, like, we've been paying so, like, overinflated amounts for these homes, you owe us money for this conspiracy. And in the U.S.
Sorry, I'm like, am I involved in a conspiracy?
No, but this is exactly it. So
do I not know it?
So what happened is, initially, one of these cases were heard. It's the Sitzer decision, where a jury heard this case and said, evil realtors, you now are going to be fined billions of dollars, literally billions,
I don't have
for
billions.
this conspiracy, because we believe there is a conspiracy between you, the associations, and the MLSs that force a cooperating fee on the MLS to exist. Now, what does this have to do with Canada?
I'm feeling defensive.
Well, here's the risk. So what happened is NAR said, look, and now as a result of that decision, a bunch of copycat lawsuits all over the country came in.
For sure.
So what NAR said is, like, look, we got to stop this. So we're going to get into an agreement, okay? And we're going to settle this with all these buyer reps, or all these different buyers that are claiming all these lawsuits. It's just too much. Let's settle. So they settled, agreeing to pay these buyers $148 million. Now, this and a couple other things. This settlement only covers certain brokerages who are members of the National Association of Realtors. Brokerages that made $2 billion volume in sales or less. So the big boys are not part of this. Yeah, the big boys that have sold more than $2 billion a year.
Like agents?
Brokerages.
Oh, I'm like, I want to meet those agents.
But think about it. These agents are part of these brokerages. So if these brokerages are part of these lawsuits and they have to shell out dough, it's going to affect the agents in the US.
No, for sure. Sorry, I was just trying to be funny, but yes. It landed badly.
So what they said is, okay, we'll pay the money and we will agree to not have a rule with respect to the MLSs that NAR runs. Remember, in the US, you have private and you have private MLSs and MLSs that are run by the National Association of Realtors and members of it. And basically said, and we will not require that our listings show a co-op fee.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes. And this is why it doesn't even matter.
This is why I'm also learning on the fly, because I just, so much of it doesn't make sense to me. But by them settling, did they concede to guilt?
No.
Okay, so that's one thing. Yeah. Two is, and I heard that in the U.S. now it'll say like 0% or like to be negotiated. But is there still a part where it says co-op fee, or is that now taken away completely?
This is the caveat. So what really these lawsuits wanted to happen was that it would be forbidden for buyer agents to be compensated, period.
Stop right there for 1 second, please. That is where I have so much to say, and I would love to hear, and like people will comment below in YouTube, and this can be the short or whatever, but this is where I am so curious for all the people that want that to go away. And there are so many, and that is why I wanted to talk about it, because there are people who want it to go away. Right. Because there is that perception you're selling your home, and one guy comes in, shows it once, sends you an offer, and you go, I'm going to give that one guy 2.5%. He didn't do anything, or she, or whatever. And those people want that to go away completely. They want to save the money. Go on, we will discuss.
Yes, there's also some interesting studies that are bubbling up with respect to public perception, which we touch upon once we round this out. So what NAR didn't agree to is that blanket rule of buyer agents cannot be compensated. So here's the this is the big workaround, which is why I'm like, what's really gonna
by the seller or not be compensated at all?
period, by the seller.
By the seller.
Sorry, yes. And so like the agent could say, buyer, pay me, totally fine, the seller couldn't. So that was what was wanted, not what happened. All MLS said, or NAR said, was we just won't force a little section that says how much the buyer agent will be compensated. Where that can appear is on a brokerage's website, a non-MLS member website like Zillow, like homes.ca, like what have you, and all of it. So what's going to likely happen, and I think the MLSs are going to kind of do a workaround that we could talk about in the US, in which they're now saying if you get data from us, you have to follow the same rule that we have to, which is no co-op fees. I think that's how they're going to get around it. But like, if I were like a Sotheby's or a big brand in the US, I'd be like, hallelujah. Because now I can do something the MLSs can't do, which is write down how much, the co-op fee for the buyer agent. And I'm going to get all the eyeballs being driven to my site. So it's not that buyer agents can't get comped. It's just these conversations have to happen elsewhere. Now, here's another reality about why I don't really think this matters all that much in Canada. Okay, so now let's talk about Canada. Yes, we have almost copycat lawsuits in Canada. Most people don't know about it. Here's the difference.
Because they have no legs.
In Canada, it's a very high bar to prove conspiracy. Quite literally, you have to have videotape evidence of like the CEO of all the MLSs, all of them that are being sued, and the CEOs of all of the different brokerages that are being sued in a room together with their cigars in a smoky room saying,
that's what I think people think happens.
We all agree, it doesn't happen. We all agree that buyer agents will be compensated 2.5% and no less. Do we all agree? Yes, we all agree. Yes. Okay, we're going to all tell everyone to make sure that's what happens. We're going to make the same rules. Yes, 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 yes. That never happened, period. And in fact, if you've been in the real estate game long enough, you'll also know that 2.5% for buyer agents is not the standard. It varies. It varies across Canada. It varies across cities. It varies everywhere.
Where have you seen it the lowest across Canada?
BC.
Well, BC is about 5 years behind us, right? So, or ahead of us. Ahead of us. So what are they on average in BC?
So it works out to an average of like 2.1 or 1.75 certain markets, and they do it in tiered buckets. Like you get 2% of the first 100,000.
So as I was saying, I had a client who just brought it up with me the other day, and that was one of the solutions that, and by the way, I have to say, I don't think that's, I think the question is not so much whether buyer agents deserve to be paid, because you know what, guys? Like if someone's doing a job for you, they should be paid. I think the biggest difference that people forget about is they're like, okay, so I'm going to sell my house and I'm not going to pay the buyer. The buyer is going to pay their rep, right? Mm-hmm. And it sounds logical, right? Like, I didn't hire that guy. Yeah. Why do I have to pay him? I hired my agent, right? They should be paying their person. Okay. So who's paying the land transfer tax? So when I looked up in the US, there's only 23 states that have a land transfer tax.
Oh, it's so much cheaper.
Yeah. So first of all, and the highest land transfer tax equated to $7,000 per million in the state of Florida. Right. So if you're buying a property in the city of Toronto, not only do you have the provincial, but you have the city tax land transfer. So you have a double land transfer tax. And for every million, you're looking at close to $34,000. Mm-hmm. So sellers who are, and I get it, like it's not that I don't get the affordability. We just had an episode on affordability and prices and mortgages and inflation and grocery and gas and everything's expensive. That's not the point. The point is that if the buyer has to now pay, let's even just say a flat fee. They have to pay a flat fee to their agent, or they have to pay an hourly rate, or they pay the full commission and the land transfer tax. You don't think that buyer's now going to look at, okay, well, my mortgage broker says I can afford this, But when you sit with a mortgage broker, they also say, this is how much money you have for taxes, this is how much money you have a land transfer, and if there's $35,000 that you have to pay in land transfer or commissions that you weren't expecting, that's coming off your purchase price as a seller. And you're going to get that. It's still going to affect you.
Yes. So the question is, okay, so essentially in the US, they're saying like, look, like all these costs, buyers factor into like the offers that they make, and like it's making it like more unaffordable for the buyer because it's like another cost that they're having and incurring, et cetera, right?
You would see a decrease, you think 4.5% in March in a decrease in sales would be what we saw? If we found out tomorrow that buyers had to pay the commission, it would kill the market.
Yeah.
It would. Psychologically, everything. It would kill the market.
Now the argument is that, well, they do pay for it.
No.
Right? It's what
No. Your analogy is brilliant.
So like we do pay for it because, hey, it's part of the sale price that the seller's thinking about when they're listing. Now, here is the reality, a couple of things. So to prove that there's like a conspiracy, we have to show like that there's price fixing that's happening, right? I can promise you, I've been in this business for well over a decade.
In senior executive C-suite roles too, to be able to be a part of those conversations if they happen.
And I am telling you, I have seen a whole range of how agents get compensated, which blows in the face and like absolutely is a slam dunk argument for people up in the defendants in Canada to say, this is why there's no conspiracy. If there was conspiracy for one type of price, 2.5%, then you wouldn't see $99.99. You wouldn't see the kickbacks that we see to buyers for buying. We wouldn't see a range of commission prices from 1% to I'll sell your home for a buck.
1%. Right. There was
$9.99 or $9.99. I'll sell your home for $1,000.
If anyone has done that, please DM me. I would love to hear how that. And I'm being actually serious. If anyone is listening and has done one of those, I want to hear from you.
Yes, I want to hear how that went.
I will have you on the podcast. I want to hear how that went. I love the ones. We will do it for 1%. We will stage.
And we'll talk about that in a second as to like what that actually looks like.
Sorry, I'm going all over the place.
It's okay.
I just kid.
So in Canada, that's just like one argument. There's also another argument basically saying we're relying upon the legislation to guide us. We're doing exactly what the legislation has said, and therefore it's impossible for us to be violating the law because the law is telling us what to do. This is what I mean. In Ontario, for example, agents, there's a requirement for compensation to be clearly outlined. It has to be written, So the MLSs and real estate agents or brokers that are implicated would say, look, we're doing exactly what the rules say. Where there's compensation, it's being disclosed. We're disclosing it. Yes. We're disclosing it all these different ways. We're informing our buyers as to when that actually happens, blah, blah, blah. The buyer rep agreements themselves say that, hey, buyer, if I don't get compensated this amount for when I find a home for you that we've worked together on finding, you got to pay me, right? That's part of the buyer rep agreement. And so what happens is like it's all there. So there's much less to go on in Canada versus the US, where the rules are varied across various jurisdictions. And also the legal theory when it comes to economic harm or conspiracy or anti-competitive behavior. In the US, the legal theory is big is bad. The bigger you are, the more harm we will likely see to the consumer, right? In Canada,
I would
different.
think it's Canada would think that because they're so capitalist in the U.S. I would think
Canada really is more. Canada says big is good. Canada's legal theory is big is good. Take a look. We have how many service providers when it comes to where we can get our internet from? Banks, supermarkets, etc. In Canada, we have mostly oligopolies when it comes to the variety of things that we do. Like internet provider is a good one. Right? And so in Canada, the legal theory is better because it causes for economies
stability.
Of scale.
Oh.
Right? So I can cut out a lot of my overhead costs in order to pass down those savings to the consumer. Doesn't happen, but that's the legal theory in Canada. So when people are saying, oh,
it's so interesting, it's so true.
Right. So in Canada, this anti-competitive claims, it's not going to work here. Big is good. Big is good. So when people were saying,
That's
well, we
why
have
they've
this,
let Treb and hold on to, like, listen, that's a big thing in our industry also, is like they fought not to allow sold prices to be allowed. I mean, not to like totally go side, but we said like this industry is very ripe for disruption. And what is the only disruption we've seen? House Sigma. That's it.
which is a really
good app.
like,
That's it.
a search
like
platform.
a minimum, like literally even listed as a great one, and it can't get traction because we got one. We're good.
Yeah.
Like
We're
it's
good.
crazy.
Yes.
We're good enough. It's fine. One was fine.
Yes.
I mean, listen. Burlington also has 2% co-op.
Oh.
It's just being established. I don't know why. No one can tell you.
Burlington, Brampton, Mississauga is 1.75 now. It's places out in
But
Alberta.
that could also be a reason to like get people to come out. Like it could be the sense that there's less people. Who knows? But to me, I feel like, what's the solution? So let's say someone here is like, okay, I want to sell. I don't want to pay I don't want to pay the buyer. I don't want to pay the buyer's fee, right? I don't think they deserve it.
Right.
What's the solution? Because I love, it's like when when you talk to like children and they're like, I don't want, no. It's like, well then, okay, you don't want it. That's fine. What's the solution then?
Right. So
My favorite is by the hour. I'm available by the hour.
that is a really good one.
Like a lawyer?
But here's the
Can you
reality,
imagine?
Rachel. These companies and business models have existed in Canada for years. It's just they never have gained traction. And this is why I don't think this settlement in the US will do anything in Canada as far as like
No, we're too
new method.
conservative.
We just don't change. And so unless the consumer in this industry, I've been hearing ripe for disruption for well over a decade and nothing has happened. Because
Why do you think that? Because I think people want it. I think that there's an appetite for disruption. And by the way, I would also go back to the only thing that I would also see happen in the business is very similar to what's the saying? The brain
Brain drain?
brain drain that we had when doctors.
Yeah, brain drain. Yeah.
So, and we had a little bit of a conversation about this a gazillion years ago. Being a real estate agent wasn't a job. My story is I was 16 years old. I wanted to be an agent. My mother looked at me and went, that's not a job. You're not going to be an agent. You're going to go to university. And it wasn't. It was a jobette, mostly women. I mean, all that.
Bake some cookies, put it
Yes,
into the home.
exactly. Okay. Respectable. I'm not shitting on anybody. Anyway, and then it became a major job. And yes, there was great earning potential. And yes, people looked at it and said, you know what? There are people who are selling real estate that have MBAs, that are lawyers. There is some serious skill in this business now. There's a lot of non-skill. And this is what, sorry, that's not even a word, but like 85% of agents don't make it to year 5. We know this.
Yes.
The amount of agents that do 20 or plus deals a year are 2%. Yeah. Like literally 2%. I think that there is, and I think this is what I talked through with this client that I had the meeting with the other day is, these are the numbers that I think people don't realize. I think that they look at, again, the headlines, and they think, well, average house price is $1.5 million, like $2 million. Okay, 2.5, you're making $50,000. These guys are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. No. So first of all, it's not true. The majority, listen, 90% of the business is done by 10% of us, but I assure you, sorry, I just hit my cat, might have to do that. Podcasts, marketing, this is now running a business.
Yeah.
It is not coming and turning a light on. And I think that if any disruption, which by the way, I would welcome, if it were to have less people in this business, and not for competition, there's enough business to go around for all the good ones, but it is for the people that are coming in that I believe sellers look at and say, what did that guy do? Yeah. Or what did that woman do? He's a part-time Uber driver, or he's still like, I don't know. I get that part.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And so I think another big piece.
Sorry, that was a rant.
No, difference between Canada and the US. So NAR, that settlement came out of the actual jury decision in Sitzer, in which a jury and people don't like real estate agents. Like they don't like lawyers. They don't like dentists. Like there's like a hate on for the industry for sure, for the reasons that you said. Now, there was a jury that tried the situation and came up with a decision of billions of dollars being awarded against NAR. Okay, that doesn't happen in Canada. There's no jury that hears these competition cases. So like we're not going to have that same outcome as well.
We're not on Law and Order.
No, we're not. It's just not going to happen, right?
No Judge Judy.
So to like round out your conversation or your point of like, okay, so what's going to happen? I think a whole lot of nothing. Why? Because what do buyers think about when they're buying their home? They're not thinking about the lawsuits in the US or a pending lawsuit in Canada. They're thinking about, can I get a home for the best price right now that I can afford? Okay, and that's why no one's, like, they're not like sitting there going like, I demand change. Nobody cares. And the seller's thinking, I need to sell my house for the best price possible. And here's the interesting part. Everyone hates realtors, but their realtor. And everyone says, I hate realtors, but my realtor's a great realtor. Right? You know, there you go. And so why I don't think there's going to be that change is because it's like, yeah, I hate realtors, but I love my realtor.
But that's what I'm talking about, is the reality is that there's this perception, but the good ones are really good and they're worth the money. And if you have someone that you don't think is worth the money, don't hire them.
Yes.
I've walked out of a doctor's office that I was like, not for me. I mean, we all have those choices.
Yeah, yes. And I would love to see alternative models come out there. The problem is like, can you actually make a go of it? So, okay, we are getting short on time. Property Guys, I know the founder, Walter, out east, great guy. His concept was what we're talking about, like pay.
What was it? I saw the billboards.
Property Guys it's been around for like well over a decade now too, where you pay like flat fee models, right, and fee for service type of thing. It's been around forever.
But so is FSBO. How many people do that?
And that's my point.
And FSBO is for sale by owner, so it's another. I mean, you could have said that could have taken off and people wouldn't have to sell, they wouldn't have to do, and like the listing commission, and what was that? Remember there was that other online, this was like 20 years ago, there was another online product, Rogers listed, or they bought it to become a brokerage.
Yes, Zoocasa. And it became like and then the economics couldn't work and they found that there was no demand for like the FSBO type of model. And so they became a regular brokerage. And
I remember at that time, again, like I'd be doing this for 13 years. I remember asking her about it and she said to me, and this is what it comes down to. This is probably your largest asset. Mm-hmm. Most people can say that their home is their largest asset. Are you going out there and doing it by yourself? Chances are, Listen, There was a couple that called us about a condo we have. They're looking for something. They've got a very healthy budget. They're from out of town. Would you like our help? No, we're doing it ourselves.
Right.
I personally don't recommend it for a myriad of reasons, primarily just the ease and the expertise, but there are people who want to do it. And there always are going to be people.
Right. And so this is how I think about this particular topic. And I think this lends itself to how people think about all things when they buy and sell. If it's high volume and like low impact, if you make a wrong decision, you don't need an expert. Like for example, I go on Amazon, I buy the wrong toilet paper, whatever. I'll buy
a car.
Yeah, like whatever. Because I buy it often, not a big deal, it's a couple bucks, what have you. If you do it infrequently and it has big ramifications if you do it wrong, I believe that people will always want an expert. And so frankly, if you're an agent who's worried, be an expert. Do a good job. Understand how to like support the person. For example, like Rachel, with yourself, when we were talking about buying a home, you'd really walk us down the path of like, okay, well, you lock in your rates now because it's super low. And like if you pay $100,000 over the asking price and what you think is market value now, it doesn't matter because if you buy today versus a couple of months from now when rates start to go up, you're going to save yourself on your mortgage interest payments, right? So you'll save over the $100,000 that you're overpaying. So point being is like having that level of expertise is going to be invaluable because it's infrequent and it's a huge cost. So what I think is going to end up happening as a result of this decision, I think 5 to 6 years from now, you will see more like more like different types of models where agents that are representing
Less
buyers
agents.
maybe employees of a brokerage for a certain
That's
amount.
by
you
the way,
might see
that's
that.
an interesting
That
model.
already exists.
Yeah.
It already exists, and it hasn't really taken off. And so you may see that. You may be seeing an hourly rate. You may see agents on the buy side get involved much later in the stage. So more on the paperwork. What should I offer? Gut check me. Is this too much? Not enough? Is this a lemon that I'm buying? I think that's where we might end up. What does that mean for compensation for agents? I don't know. But I can tell you this. Commission compression has been happening for decades, meaning that we're paying less and less commission. So the
Prices have just gone up.
Yes.
So it hurts.
So the argument that, oh, no, prices have gone up, but agents have always been making the same percentage, that's not true. That has been decreasing for some time, right? And so this is another reason as to why I don't think the lawsuit is going to do anything in Canada, because commission rates have been changing. If there was a conspiracy, they wouldn't be. And also, again, I just believe that people are going to want that expertise.
They've also always been negotiable. So I said to you, I believe that the value of agents have changed. The value proposition of what we bring to the market, I believe, has changed. So if you look back, let's even say 10 years or more, these people who were like, call me for a free home evaluation. But now, now you have House Sigma, or you have sold prices, or listen, and I say to clients all the time who are selling, you are working with buyers that have more information in their hands than they ever have. They are savvier than they ever have been. You are not going to pull the wool over their eyes. They know the value. Their money is expensive. So now you say, okay, I'm now going to negotiate with someone who doesn't have an agent, that doesn't know how this works. Do you think it's going to go well? I have a saying, if the agent on the other side of my deal is good, it's 90% done. Not because we're going to convince anybody to do something they don't want to do, but because it is a difficult and intricate process. In year one, couldn't tell you, I knew what I was doing. Year two, I learned more. 3, 4. It is one of those businesses that the longer you're in, the better you're at it, because you have the experience. Right. And I'm not shitting on like agents that have only been doing it for a couple of years. If you're in a good brokerage and you're supported properly, you can go gangbusters. All I'm saying is that both sides are very, very important. And I still believe that the people who want value for their money will hire the right people and they'll pay for it. Yep. And by the way, even if it changed and even if the buyers had to pay the commission, I still believe the people who see the value in it and had good agents will pay it, and they wouldn't even think about it.
True.
They might negotiate it. They might say, hey, listen, I'm in the market for a $5 million. You sold my $2 million. Like, I have a $2 million. I'm going to sell. I'm going to give you full commission on that. I need to buy a $5 million. I'm selling up. Let's talk about how we can negotiate the rate on one end.
Yes.
Yes. That maybe become a conversation. But I've told you, I've listed properties where it's an estate sale. They give me the keys. I have to deal with emptying, garbage. I mean, you have no idea. I could write a book. And my value is worth the 2.5%. And they do it with pleasure because there's no heavy lifting. They don't have to deal with it. I've also walked into properties that are curated and designed from top to bottom, and I've sold it with pleasure at 1.5. I haven't discounted my value. I just haven't delivered the same.
Yes.
And that's the difference.
That is so beautiful. I was hoping you were going to mention that, because when we were talking about this beforehand, you said it perfectly. The role of the realtor has fundamentally changed, and you have to find the right realtor that shows the value. And that's perfect.
And not everybody wants that, by the way.
That's value, though, of like, Rachel, here are the keys. Empty this place, organize it, stage it, manage it, and let me know when an offer comes in. Very, very different from this house is perfectly curated. You just have to, polish the doorknob and we're going to have tons of buyers lined up. I understand. Like, okay, so Rachel hasn't emptied, done this, I get it. Like, you still, however, have incurred the cost of marketing, listing, and all that type of stuff. But Rachel, your point is that And I think it's true. The role of the agent has changed because agents, I would even say,
well, they didn't stage even.
9 years ago, never staged.
There was no staging.
Never.
It was just, well, I mean, listen, staging is not inexpensive, at least if you do it properly.
Yeah.
There are some very cheap ones, and you can tell when you walk into those homes. But, I mean, agents would have been like working for free.
Yes.
Truly, and I think that's a really important point, is that I think people are shocked. I have paid upwards of $15,000 to just to stage a home. So, you know, when you start looking at without getting paid, right? So, I mean, I think that's, you know, something else that people realize is that we work with buyers. We could work with buyers for months. Mm-hmm. I've worked with buyers for years. I have not been paid. This is the way the business works. I'm not complaining, but I think that people forget that. Like you can work for years and not get paid.
And this is why I think where the innovation is happening is what you're already doing. You're ahead of the curve, Rachel, in that you provide a suite of options. I will stage, I will do this and this is the price for it. Or I will not do these things and this is the price for it. You choose. Right? Because you can demonstrate value at all of those different price points. That is where the change will likely happen and become table stakes. Whereas what I think you do, and this is why the public perception is like, oh my gosh, you just walked in and you know, you made all this money. No. That's not what's actually happening. So that's the innovation.
Well, I think also good realtors will gladly wait 2 years with you because, and I do understand that there are agents out there who can't wait for the money or don't do the volume, who do 3 or 4 deals a year. So every paycheck means that much to them. And so they're like, yeah, you should buy that. You should buy that. You should buy that. And it's like, no. They don't necessarily look, like I tell my clients, I think about how life can change on a dime. So you're going to buy this. How do I sleep at night allowing you to buy something that I think you overpaid for? Yeah. And then you call me in 3 years and say, you know what? We had twins, or we got a great job offer outside of Canada, or we're leaving Toronto, or whatever. I need to sell the house. And I go, well, it's not really worth that. Well, why'd you let me buy it?
Yeah.
Right? You know, like I talk to my clients. I know when they're having their baby. I know when they're getting married. I know. So how do you hire someone that's not invested in your future? And so if you're not paying, like if you don't have that person, like you're talking about someone you're going to pay $100, they're going to get $500. Is that person invest? And I'm not saying I'm coin operated in that way. I'm not focused, but someone who has a serious business is going to be invested in you and your long term versus someone who's working in this business. And you know what? 6 months from now, they might be like, you know what? I'm going to go work at the Gap.
Yes. And so what I think a lot about how consumers behave and how buyers buy. That's what I do at Houseful. Like I think about like consumer. And what I've noticed is people are always willing to pay for 2 things as a buyer. Number 1, comfort that they didn't overpay.
Yes.
And number 2, that they didn't buy a lemon. A home that's fallen apart. And I believe
they did, they got a really good deal. No, I'm just joking.
Exactly.
No, those are 2 very good points.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, does that mean though that the realtor won't be part of that journey? No. It's just when the realtor's brought in, it's just going to be a little bit different. Back in the day before we had access to an online MLS, what happened? I would literally, if I wanted to buy a home, I literally had to find an agent and say, give me a list of the homes because I couldn't access it. Right? Then it went online. Oh no, it's online. Oh my God, no buyer is going to work with any agent. No, I just found the home. Now I'm calling you saying I want to see this home, right? And so now instead of me going to you to find the homes, and I'm going to you with the list of homes that I want to look at. And then it's up to the realtor to start curating which homes are actually good for me to look at, and then to help guide me through the process of figuring out the difference between list price versus sale price. And then whether or not the comfort of having whether or not I've actually overpaid and bought a good home. So like my point being is that there's an evolution. The evolution is right here.
I just don't know if this is the one. I don't know. You think so? We've been talking about it for a while. You think you have been asking me whether I thought the buyer agent role will be as strong,
Yes, as strong.
and I do.
And I still think to solve, unless like an AI solves for that in a way that really provides us like good comfort, like, yes, I'm confident with the offer I'm putting forward, maybe. But I just think that's about at least 5 years away.
I don't know. Well, I mean, the way technology, but I want to leave it, and I'd love in the comment section just to hear if anyone,
Yes.
what people think. Would you ever, have you ever bought something without an agent? And how did that go? And if you're thinking about buying in the future, would you ever consider doing without an agent?
Yeah, I'd love to learn about that and,
Yep,
and the
let's
reasons
hear
for
it.
it.
Thank you.